Hello and welcome to the 58th episode of the Accountant's Success Secrets podcast. I'm Mark Lee, mentor, speaker and debunker.
And I'm Philippa Haynes of Insight 101, supporting you to stand out. So each week on the podcast, we showcase another experienced accountant or bookkeeper who we think can inspire and encourage other accountants and bookkeepers in practice around the UK.
We both recognise that every accountant and bookkeeper is unique and distinct. They have different backgrounds, experiences and reasons for starting and building their practices.
So we ask them to share their stories, including the highs, the lows, and what they've learned along the way. We look to explore the things that make them different in terms of their background, their successes, their failures, and their focus.
Our aim is to provide some fundamental insights for you, our loyal listener. And if you'd like to share your story in a similar way, do please get in touch with Philippa or me. We're now taking bookings into July. Wow.
Yeah, we are. We are. So we really are genuinely delighted to introduce Harriet Formby today, who in 2020 established Below the Line Finance based in Bath, so not far from me. She originally qualified as a chartered accountant while working for a firm of management accountants, business advisors, and zero specialists. So then she went on to take a series of roles in corporate accountancy, working for what she calls faceless entities. We've all been there, in addition to her ICAEW qualification. Harriet is also a trauma money practitioner. We'll find out about that. She also holds the Institute of Leadership and Management Level 7 postgraduate qualification in executive coaching and mentoring, business administration and management. That is a long sentence.
It's a long title and qualification. It's amazing. You're very, very welcome, Harriet. What would you like to add before we get into the interview?
Thank you for the introduction, and it's really great to kind of join you today, and looking forward to getting into the questions.
Lovely.
Yeah, no, we've got it's going to be really great because you've got some fantastic insights that we know about already. But just before we start, we must thank our sponsor, Pinnacle Global, a trusted outsourcing partner with well over 150 clients across the UK and Ireland. Pinnacle CEO Mayank Pandya is a chartered accountant based in London, and he has a passion to encourage gosh, I can't talk today, innovation and excellence in the accounting profession. Pinnacle has offices in the UK and offshore delivery centres across India, employing over 300 high quality staff. With a strong focus on quality assurance, Pinnacle has helped many UK accounting firms to scale their capacity and operations. So to find out more, please visit www.pinnacleoss.co.uk. And you'll also find the link online wherever you're listening to this podcast.
Also supporting the podcast is the Tax Advice Network. Their website enables accountants to choose specialist tax advisors for general support, tax clinic support, or for help across any of over 100 areas of tax. It's free to use. You just pay the tax advisor that you choose after agreeing terms with them. Go take a look at their website, find a taxadvisor.online, where you can also register to get their weekly tax tips, which are written especially for general practitioner accountants.
Great. Now back to our guest, Harriet. As you know, we aim to keep the podcast to around 30 minutes, and we do that by focusing the discussion around a few key questions.
I'll go first. So let's go back to the start, Harriet. How and why did you set up your own accounting practice?
So basically, if I go like right back, when I was, before I became an accountant, when I was a student at university, I was really interested in entrepreneurship and working with really creative people that had great ideas but were kind of scared of the numbers side. They thought finance wasn't for them, and ultimately their ideas didn't flourish because they didn't do the work on the finances, and that was a real risk that they wouldn't get their ideas off the ground. So that's what prompted me to kind of get into finance and accountancy. And then from there, I really loved working with startups and scale ups and sort of agencies, looking at the forward looking parts, raising investment, helping them to really achieve their mission. And because I guess I like the kind of creative part of problem solving, and so I basically went through a stint of doing sort of more project based interim work, and finance transformation in kind of M&A and private equity, and businesses being kind of bought and sold and that sort of thing. And that looks like, high pressure, lots going on, lots of targets to meet, really large companies. And that was kind of, kept me busy. But I really had this sense of, what's the point? Because I had this spark from before of, I really love people, connecting the dots, being able to achieve what they want to do and being really excited by it. And suddenly I'm just making money for people that I don't even know who they are. They're in behind the scenes, the ultimate people that are benefiting from this. And we're all really, really busy. And it actually feels like, well, at the end of the day, it doesn't feel like I'm really helping anybody. So that was really the catalyst for me to say, right, it's time to, I could carry on doing these roles where I come in as kind of like the interim FD and stuff, or and going for bigger and bigger jobs, or I could get out now and start building my own thing in my own way and actually enjoy myself a bit more and get away from that pressure of, back then before COVID, it was all travel and, in-person stuff. So there's a lot going on. And I just kind of wanted that. I've got lots of animals and, horses and dogs and all sorts of things. And I wanted to be more present in that space, that kind of rural life. And that didn't, match with big corporate stuff where you're jetting off here and there all the time. So for me, it was very much, I want to serve the people I want to serve and do it in a really nice way that feels good. And I can feel like at the end of the day, I've worked on something I really love doing and I've made a difference. And yeah, that was really the kind of catalyst for doing it. And how I did that was, initially I did go sort of part-time. I did some interim things and then gradually built up, enough client work to sort of say, okay, I can do this full time, which I think a lot of people ultimately do as a sort of stepping stone into it.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah.
I think that's the right way to go about it as well. So you were taking part-time roles essentially before you put yourself out there as a fractional CFO and mini CFO, I think you call yourself sometimes as well, part-time CFO.
Yeah. So I managed to, so something I was doing full time, I managed to drop down to part-time hours, which, is quite tricky because there was still the workload of full time, to be honest, in less time. So that wasn't necessarily a great move on my part. But yeah, I started just picking up things that were like, a few days a week that would keep me some cash flow coming in. And then that was, sort of where I went. So I sort of dropped my hours in a full-time role down, started picking up things that I was running concurrently, and then it kind of went from there.
Love it.
Yeah. So I mean, it sounds, I guess my next question is, what have you learned along the way? And just from our conversation before this live show was, you were talking about your ideal client and changing the language to make sure that you reflect that, and talking about evolution and changing a website. So there's a whole lot of stuff. Where should we start with your learnings then?
Yeah, so I think, one of the things we were talking about earlier was in terms of, when I set out, because I was used to, the expectation, or what I thought was maybe the expectation of somebody working like as a fractional CFO in, the startup space, was that you had to be quite corporate seeming, you had to fit the mold. And so things like my website to begin with were very kind of safe in the sense of, we're professional, we're savvy, we're doing this, we're doing that. And the language was very much, that kind of cold financial world of things, and very logical. And that was fine. But very quickly I realized that I was presenting myself as a team, and actually they were going to speak to me and they were going to work with me. So it was kind of like setting an expectation that I was going to pass them off to somebody, that wasn't going to happen when I was taking inquiries. And I realized that actually, talking to people, I'm fascinated by the language people use. And this is something that I kind of, like a magpie, I'm always documenting phrases that people say to me, because I love how non-finance people actually talk about numbers and finance and accountancy, and the way that language is used is very different from people with finance background. So I like to make sure I've got that, and that, now, and my website's going through it's been through lots of iterations. It still is at the moment, because I've got a project on the go where someone's redeveloping my website, and it's going to be even better, etc. But yeah, it's very much using the language so people feel like taking down the barrier, really. So it's not like, oh gosh, I'm sitting across from somebody now who's going to judge me. It's more sort of like, I know where you are, I know where you've been, I know how you feel, and it's okay. And some of that, which was a bit trickier, was taking that, I had been somebody in a corporate life who was very always switched on, always fine, always, accurate, on time, doing the work, having the ideas, positive, finding the solutions. And I had this thing of like, I have got to be perfect all the time and showing up like this all the time, which actually isn't really what you want in an accountant. You want someone that's human, that's relatable, that isn't going to make you feel like you've got flaws. So I found that actually that's quite vulnerable to do, but to start, even just the story of my corporate experience, in the way that, I've got a bit of a villain story because I've worked for private equity firms, and like now I'm quite against, the whole private equity thing, but the fact that I can talk about that and how, a lot of people that have set up businesses can relate to this journey as well, that they've gone from working for somebody else and feeling it conflicted maybe with their values and their morals and how they wanted to do things, to setting up their own business. But that stuff doesn't just disappear, it still carries kind of with you, and so you have to integrate that into your new ways and work out what you want to sort of shed and what you want to take forward. So I found being a bit more open about that is actually very appealing to people, because they're like, oh yes, I resonate with you because I've been on that journey as well. So I'd say, yeah, in terms of that, yeah, I've kind of learned to be more open about that, but actually, almost I'd say whatever I put out, I think, does this have any trappings of traditional finance? If it does, I need to rework it and make it look so that people are kind of like, the barrier is totally broken down. And it doesn't mean that, I'm dumbing down the content, I'm not dumbing down finance or accountancy. We're still talking about all the important stuff and the strategic things and the rules and the deadlines and all of that. But it's a way that's more accessible and more approachable, because the kind of other part to that is, I found that, I've spent so many hours sitting with, entrepreneurs, and we talk about, this is the plan, this is what we need to do, off you go and do it. And then they come back and they've spent all the money, something's gone wrong, this has happened. They haven't necessarily told me what the real situation was. And I realized that this fundamental part of this is because money is very emotional. It's a very emotional topic. It's, it's shaped by our past experiences with money, like when we're growing up and what's been going on, and our experiences through running a business. And so, we know the sort of thing that often happens. So, for example, all accountants will be familiar with the idea of cash flow issues cause you stress. Yes, we get that. But the one that you don't always associate is receiving money is very stressful. So people will come to me because we've kind of opened up these channels that it's okay to talk about money and fears and things, is that actually, if you suddenly sell out a load of offers and a load of money comes into the bank, you get a grant that you weren't expecting, if you get a loan and it's, they approve a higher amount, suddenly you're holding a lot more money than you've ever had in your business. And if you don't have space to share your feelings around that, you can maybe completely waste it because you're scared to spend it and it just sits there, or you might make some very rash decisions and it's suddenly gone. And so in a past life, people were coming to me when, the thing had played out, they'd lost an opportunity because the money had sat there, they'd spent all the money, and they were coming back to tell me they'd spent it all. And so now the work I do is to try and break down those barriers, that we can talk about it. Someone can, people often say to me, look, we've got the money, and actually that's even scarier. Can you help me work through what's going on here?
Wow,
that's fascinating, Harriet. I've not come across that before. It makes perfect sense. Is that something that came out of being tell me about this trauma of money thing that you've done, which again I've never come across before?
Yeah, so this is very much centered on, we sometimes, so the traditional thing is, if you make a mistake with your money, if you're not looking at it, if you're not doing your accounts, if you're not doing what your accountant says, traditionally we'd say, well, you're a bad person, you need to get more discipline, you need to sort it out. And we take a shame-based approach sometimes to say, sort your behavior out, what's wrong with you, you should be able to do this, get on with it. And actually, so the Trauma of Money program that I've done is actually a Canadian program. So I found it very interesting because it's a whole different sort of philosophy, and it's very much around, let's take the shame out of money and let's see what's really going on. And when we realize that people running businesses are essentially just humans with all the flaws, all the feelings, all the emotions, and they're sitting there being professional and running a business, but all the things that make you human don't go away. And actually, if we can sort of work out what's going on with money beyond just like you should and shouldn't do these things, we understand what the drivers are for those behaviors, and we can maybe change them, or we can give space to sometimes you just have to observe what's going on. It might be about, in that example of somebody that's worried about money coming in, we might talk about their belief system around money and what it means, and perhaps they feel they don't deserve the money, and that might be at the root of it. So sometimes understanding what's happening is there, and also just the general slowing down. So there's always this thing of urgency and we need to do things quickly, but actually sometimes if you're holding issues with money, and that example of money arriving is just not to do anything, like let it settle in your nervous system, recognize what's going on in your body, talk to somebody about it, then approach it in a way that you feel like you're calm and your needs are met, so that you're able to use your brain. And we're not just walking around with brains that are on, we're also our nervous system and the things that make us human. And that means that we doing all that work basically expands the bandwidth you have to make decisions. And that's where it fits with everything else I do, because I'm very much dealing with, we're making decisions all the time with people, businesses I work with. We're making decisions about how to move forward, and if we understand this whole piece about money and how we feel about it, we can make better decisions that actually align with what we're doing.
It's absolutely wonderful. As I say, I've never come across the course, Be a Trauma of Money Certified Practitioner. You say it's Canadian, so that could be one reason I haven't encountered it. I totally see why that would be appealing and compelling to entrepreneurs who was struggling with money. And of course, something that I've long encouraged accountants to do is to help their clients know how much money to put aside to pay tax. And that's part and parcel of, we've got a lot of money, before we spend it, how much do we need to put aside to pay our tax bills, whether that's VAT, income tax, corporation tax, or whatever. So I can see that must be part of it as well. Brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I'm picking up is kind of your high emotional intelligence, I think, from you really offer something incredibly different compared to a lot of accountants. And I mean that with respect to all of the others as well, but just the way that you talk about wanting to change the language, change the tone of your marketing, and then talking about the kind of the feelings around money. This is all, I mean it's all really new stuff to hear from an accountant, so I applaud you for that. It's absolutely fantastic. I just think that there's more required there. And when we talked earlier, you said in terms of the number of clients that you have, you prefer to go deep rather than wide and have a lot. And you said because you work with them quite deeply, and I'm beginning to see how that happens. You have to have time with them. I mean, how much time do you spend with your clients then?
Yeah, that's it. Is very much, I had a point where it was kind of a decision to say, do I grow this, take lots of work that's coming my way, hire people, productize what I'm offering, and we grow like that? And that didn't feel good. I thought, actually, I'd like to work with less people and be able to give them the time that they deserve. So, I mean, generally as a minimum, that would look like kind of quarterly meetings working on the finances, but it might be monthly. And I think that the bit that I try to keep the open lines on, and this is obviously where you have to manage your pricing and capacity for, is just that they can get in touch, because I found that if people save stuff up or wait until they've made maybe the wrong what they might later regret is the wrong decision, I prefer people to sort of leave me a voice note and tell me what they're thinking, and then we can, so I need to make sure I've got time to be able to like respond to them and not think I'm being bugged by somebody and that they're outside of their scope or whatever. So that's something I've got to manage my time on. But it is very much about the mixture of, yes, formal stuff, or we're doing reviews, we're looking at stuff, we're making decisions, we're sitting down for an hour or two and we're going through it all, as well as just these little nuggets of time when you're, somebody's just sharing their thoughts and you're going back, which is, I guess, is blending onto the kind of mentoring coaching side as well. It's kind of bringing in those skill sets, because actually that is just as impactful as some of the strategy session type stuff that we do when we're looking at figures and spreadsheets and, looking at the big picture stuff. Is just, oh, this has happened, what should we do about it? And we can talk it through. And that's something that I think is relevant. And the thing is, it comes across, I guess, that I'm very accommodating, and in some ways I am very accommodating. I'll say to people, like, if you want to cancel a meeting, it's all my meeting invites go out and say, like, with reminders and stuff, and they say, like, if you want to cancel, it's no problem, we can rearrange. And that is, that's partly me being a nice person, but there's another side to that, is if I give people the agency that they don't, if they're nervous about a conversation and they've got an opt-out, the fact that they've opted in gives them more agency to feel that they're kind of empowered, and they'll approach that with the right mindset. But the other side to that is, actually, some of these things really do work, because if there's a lot of open dialogue and options to cancel, I don't find people no-show, like prospects and stuff, because they've had these little nudges and they've got agency there. It's very rare that people don't show up for meetings, and actually it works both ways. And I'm still very strict on how people contact me, and response time and things like that mean that, like, I'm somebody that I don't like phone calls out of the blue. Like, if a not unknown number rings me, I'm not going to be answering that, because it could be a salesperson, it could be so many different things that are going to distract me from, because a lot of my work's quite deep. I don't want that sort of distraction. So people I work with know that maybe it's like a case of leaving me a WhatsApp message or a voice note on WhatsApp, and I'll come back to it. It'll be sort of asynchronous communication. I'll come back to it, some point. It's still responsive. It will still be dealt with that day, etc. And maybe that hour if I'm free. But it is still boundaried, and it is still, it's not about accommodating every whim that they've got.
And it's so important to recognise that your time is your time. And those accountants who think they have to answer the phone immediately or respond to every email immediately, it sort of misses the fact that if a phone call or an email arrives when you're in a meeting with a client, you can't deal with it straight away. So why feel you need to deal with it straight away if you're in the middle of doing a key piece of work, or you're strategizing, or you're being interviewed on a podcast, or whatever? Just do it. I think asynchronous, which is jargon, of course, but you're right. It's a professional way to operate, and it sounds like you've got your clients well trained. We should pick. Are there any mistakes that you've made that you've learned from? Well, obviously we've all made mistakes and learned from. So what would you highlight?
I think that the main ones would be trying. I mean, we've talked initially about me kind of trying to be a corporate version of myself and being scared, to show the bit more personality and things that would maybe make me differentiate, which I've gone on a journey and realized that, of course, that what differentiates you is actually what's relevant to your, the people that are going to be right to work with you. I would say probably, in terms of, I have at times, people have said to me, you can't, it's very idealistic to just think you can work with mission-led businesses and there's enough of them that are going to sort that out. And so, there was a time when I was a bit more like, okay, well, maybe I need to appeal to more, be more wide, be the service, and open it up a bit more, because maybe people are right, and this is early on, and this isn't going to land, and I've just got to accept that I've got to take on anybody that comes my way that's got an interest in it. And that felt really overwhelming and kind of stressful, and I thought that takes a lot of the excitement out of things if I've got to kind of open up to people that maybe I don't know. What I really love doing, and this is why as well, like with the marketing and stuff, is I try and make sure the right people come my way so it's easy, is if I'm really excited about someone's business and I want them to do well, it's not work, it's kind of like, it's just a really, it is work, but it's a really nice thing to be involved in. And so I think being brave enough to say no to things when I wanted to say yes was probably the mistake initially, was saying yes to them, obviously, and getting up some work that wasn't really fully aligned, and then feeling very frustrated and like, why did I set up my own business to end up running around for for some clients that weren't really aligned, and they were kind of, it didn't feel good. And so just trusting that, no, actually I can show up and appeal to these people, and I don't need thousands of clients, so therefore, I don't need to worry about appealing too wide.
And I love the way on your website, sort of the conventional accountancy and compliance services is sort of third on the list. And yes, you're an ICAW chartered accountancy practice, and you provide accountancy, tax and compliance service, but only as an add-on for those clients that are engaging you as their fractional CFO and that want more than that. If all they want is conventional accounting stuff, they're not the client for you. And you, as you say, you recognize that quite early on and tailored your focus to attract the right sort of people and to push away or discourage the wrong type of people, which is, you did that quite early compared to many accountants that I've worked with, shall we say. So well done.
Yeah. I mean, I think, you have the benefit of, as I've said, being emotionally intelligent in the sense that you can read people, you can understand how language changes things, you can listen to people, and that sounds really silly, but you can have a conversation with somebody, but you don't necessarily listen and hear the language that they use, but you obviously can hear that as well and sort of take it and think, I'm going to insert that into my marketing, which is a real skill. I mean, you could be a marketeer rather than an accountant, but I think you said right at the start that you're quite creative and you like to work with creative people. So you've obviously got that side to you, which is really fantastic because you've got the numbers as well. So, you really are kind of quite a lovely rounded offer for people, and not for everybody as well, as you've said, and you've kind of built that up. That's kind of what I pick up, Mark. What about you?
Yeah, no, I'd agree. I think that distinction, not only of just being not just being a fractional CFO, but coming at it from a different perspective. It's not just that you've worked in corporates and led finance teams. It's these additional qualifications and insights, and not just the money trauma practitioner, but also the mentoring qualification with the Institute of Leadership and Management as well, give you very distinct attributes and experiences that you clearly draw on when you're when you're engaging prospective clients as well as working with them down the line. And I just love the way, and you must see this as well, Philippa, every single interview we have done, and it's coming up for 50 interviews now, reveals how different every accountant's journey is and their experiences are. And if one thing comes out of all these interviews and these podcasts is the fact that accountants aren't all the same. The work, the outputs, the tax returns and accounts that get produced might be pretty similar. Every accountant is different, and you've just proved that today in spades, Harriet. Thank you so much for sharing your story and experiences with us.
And I think it's also that all clients aren't the same. One person who listens to you and goes, I've got to have Harriet as my accountant. Somebody else is going to go, yeah, not for me. I just want to, send over my numbers. And that's fine, because as you've said, you're working with people and you want to work with people who are kind of like you and sort of resonate with what you say. That's the important bit. And for those who don't, there's another flavour of accountant down the road or, across the country that will be perfect for them. And that's what I love about this podcast, because I always see it as a bit of a virtual CV for accountants. If somebody's saying, who should I use? Do you know anybody? I'm like, well, I would look at these kind of profiles here. It's really, really lovely. Good.
So, Harriet, we're coming to the end of our time together, sadly. How can listeners find out more about you and your business, whether they are accountants themselves and want to be inspired by what you say on your website or talk to you, or potential clients as well, because there could well be some of those listening too who like those differences that we've heard about?
Thank you. So website is belowthelinefinance.co.uk. So that's a obvious one to suggest. You can find me on LinkedIn, so Harriet Formby. I'm also quite active on Instagram at Below the Line Finance, and I have got a podcast that I'm a little bit inconsistent with, I would say, but it's called Voice Notes with Your CFO Bestie, and they're basically 10-minute podcasts, and it's basically looking at a topic and we talk a little bit about it, and hopefully you go away, if you don't know about finance and it's something you're probably not so much for the accountants, but unless you want to sort of see what the concept's like, obviously, it's basically something that just goes out periodically. And I do a bit of writing on Substack under Profits Reimagined, where I talk a bit more about the kind of career side and the journey and the
Lovely.
Absolutely fascinating. That's just, I'm so caught up in all this. So thank you very much for that. Philippa, how can listeners find out more about you and Insight 101?
Well, you can find me on LinkedIn or on my website, insight101.co.uk. And I support accountants and bookkeepers to stand out. And I think Harriet is just the most amazing example of that, where, she has that sort of difference in spades, and she's managed to sort of capture it and the essence of what she's about. Not everybody can do that for themselves. So she's very, very different and unique. And, that's amazing. But if you do want to understand a little bit more about where you should focus and what makes you special, then, let's have a chat. Because there's always something about you. As we've said, every accountant is different and every client or prospect needs somebody different. So let's make sure that next one is you. Mark, how about you? How can we find out more about you?
Online everywhere. I'm Bookmark Lee. Even the business card is a bookmark. Find me on LinkedIn. Bookmarklee.co.uk is my website. And one thing I've learned from working with accountants generally is that running your own practice, particularly conventional practice, isn't easy. And many sole practitioners feel isolated if they don't have partners or romantic partners, spousal partners, home partners, or business partners. And they often find that it helps to talk to somebody else. My newest client is thrilled that she can tell people she has an NED for her practice. That's me, a sort of quasi-NED mentoring support for her. And the idea is to help her feel easier, feel life is easier and better on her terms. And that's exactly what I do for my clients, whether that means better clients, fewer headaches, more profit. I'm always happy to chat, no strings attached. Some of those ad hoc conversations lead on to regular one-to-one working if you're looking for your practice to grow bigger or do things differently. Alternatively, if you're pretty happy with where things are, but you're feeling lonely and isolated, frustrated, then maybe consider joining the Sole Practice Club, which is a group of sole practitioners. They're not running big practices, but they're sole practitioners who value the time that we spend together. Or you might find that just a simple chat with me is all you needed. In any event, I'd please encourage you to reach out, connect with both Philippa and me on LinkedIn, and do please follow the podcast pages on LinkedIn and on Facebook.
Sadly, that's all we have time for today, but thank you very much, Harriet, for just a fantastic session. Our thanks too go to our sponsors of the podcast, Pinnacle Global Group, your trusted outsourcing partner. Do check out their website and let their CEO, Mayank, know you heard about Pinnacle Global on the Accountant Success Secrets podcast.
And thanks too to the Tax Advice Network, the easiest way for accountants to reach specialist tax advisors. Remember, there's no charge for using the website findataxadvisor.online, where you can also access their weekly tax tips written especially for general practitioner accountants.
Yeah. So if you enjoyed this episode, please share the love online, subscribe and leave a review on Apple, Spotify or YouTube, or let us have your direct feedback too. It all helps to broaden the reach of the podcast. And do also please contact either Mark or myself if you'd like to be interviewed, or if you have somebody you'd like to hear from. We'd definitely be happy to get any recommendations there.
Yeah, so that's wonderful. That's another fabulous, distinct, different interview. and podcast. Thanks so much, Harriet. You've been a wonderful guest. Thank you also to Philippa for making this happen. I love it. Highlight of my week. Until next time. I remember you said that at the start, so I was echoing it because it does feel that way. Anyway, until next time on the Accountant Success Secrets podcast, or anywhere else we might meet online or in real life. Bye-bye for now.
Bye.